people came out on such a dreary day. Thank you, guys. All right, so here we are. Jose is our leader. He's not a stranger to anyone here at Rhode Island College. This young man is amazing, and we'll ask you to kick it off.
Hello everyone, my name is Jose Rosario. I am a graduating senior here at Rhode Island College this year. I'm not going to be that easy. I'm going back to graduate school, so I think they're stuck with me for at least a couple more years.
Excellent.
But that's kind of why we're here today. I mean, I'm crossing that stage and getting my diploma, and the moment that I grab that piece of paper, I have opened up a whole new world for myself. I am the first person in my family to graduate from a four-year institution. And I honestly think that we live in a world now where college is a necessity. It's not necessarily a luxury that only some people should have. In order to access social mobility, in order to have a fair chance at just living in our world, we need to be able to access the skills to critically analyze things and to work in a workforce and to build our communities, whether they be affluent or not. The Rhode Island Promise Scholarship provides a chance for people to have an opportunity towards education, a chance to get a fair shot, and for some of these people that we haven't had a chance to be comparable to our peers. During Chairman Perez's time as the Labor Secretary, he spent plenty of time looking at workforce development and how jobs and college educations impact how we live in our social world. The governor spends day in and day out time to create more jobs and more opportunities. We want Rhode Island to be a place where everyone can succeed and everyone has a chance towards education, success, equity, and just comfortability. We want people to choose Rhode Island. So it is with great honor that I get to introduce these two amazing individuals. And I thank you all for coming out today because education should be a priority. And now we've seen today that it is. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We are so proud of you. I've had the opportunity to meet Jose a handful of times, and he tells me that he wants to go into government and politics. I've tried to talk him out of it, but I seem to not be able to. But he said he wants to do it because he wants to change the world. And you know what? You are changing the world already, and you will continue to. So thank you guys. Thank you for coming out today. We have a very special guest in Tom Perez. I first met Chairman Perez when I was governor-elect. I hadn't been governor yet. I was in transition. He came to my office, transition office, and he said, hey, Gina, you got a lot of work to do. I was like, I know this. But at the time, Rhode Island had some of the highest unemployment rates in America. We were number 1 or number 2 right there with Nevada. And he said, you got a labor market problem. The majority of jobs being created require something past high school. But only 4 out of 10 Rhode Islanders have a degree past high school. He said, you're not going to make it in the new economy unless you close that gap. And so I took that to heart. Now, at the time, he was the Secretary of Labor, and I have to tell you, he was fantastic. We worked together, so I took it to heart, and I held him to task, and I called him, I said, we would like a federal grant for an apprenticeship program, and he delivered, and we're getting folks jobs with an apprenticeship program. I said, we need support of our community college, he delivered. Support of labor and training, he delivered. And all of this is adding up. And by the way, because of it, we've created over 15,000 jobs for people in Rhode Island since I've been governor. Not only are we no longer 1 or 2 in unemployment, for the first time in a long time, we're below the national average at 4.5%. So here's the deal. So the good news is we're creating thousands and thousands of jobs, good family-sustaining jobs. But here's the deal. We need to make sure Rhode Islanders are getting those jobs, right? The people of Rhode Island, our family and friends and neighbors, and all these young people here, we're creating these jobs, and we need to make sure the people of Rhode Island get these jobs. And the only way that's going to happen is if they have the education and job training to get a job. 70% of all jobs, good jobs being created in Rhode Island today require some degree or credential past high school. That's the deal. That's a fact. The economy's changing, so let's change with it. This Rhode Island Promise program, this isn't about giving anything away for free. This is about making sure every Rhode Islander has the job training or education they need to get a job. It's about leveling the playing field. That's what it's about. Nobody wants a handout. The people of Rhode Island don't want something for free. They just want a chance. How many of you here are students now? You just want a chance, right? Just give me a shot. Give me that degree so I have a ticket to get a job. Just give me a chance. So that's what this is about. It's about giving you a chance, and all the people of Rhode Island, all the hardworking people of Rhode Island, to get that degree without a bundle of debt. Don't do what I did. Don't come out with $80,000 debt and marry a guy with a similar amount. I don't recommend that. It worked out okay for me. We're trying to make it better for you. Get that credential or degree, and then get one of those jobs that we're creating. That's what this is all about. And I believe any company is lucky to be in Rhode Island. And any company is going to want to be here if we pass this Promise program. Because we're going to have the skills of the future. And there's a lot, I spent a lot of time in your cafeteria, actually, here at Rhode Island College. And you're laughing because I've seen you here. Here's the thing, I talk to students, and I've talked to Jose about this. And so many people tell me the difference between getting a degree and staying in school versus dropping out is $500, $1,000. Right? You're nodding. That might not seem like a lot of money, but for some people, it determines their whole life and their whole future. And so this Promise Scholarship is meant to fill that gap so that $1,000 doesn't stand in the way of you having a brighter future. Now, there is no more passionate, sincere, intelligent advocate for the middle class than Tom Perez. And no one knows more than the relationship between skills and credentials and apprenticeships and college degrees and the thriving economy. So please join me in welcoming Tom Perez.
Good afternoon. It's great to be back here in Rhode Island. I had 4 of the best years of my life here, and it's always wonderful to be here. There's the mayor of Central Falls, Mayor Joseph. Thank you for coming here today. Isabel, who's that woman to your left? Who is she?
My mom.
Who is your mom?
Kelly Gorbea.
Oh yeah, what does she do for a living?
She's the Secretary of State.
Wow. Acorn doesn't fall far from the tree. And, you know, back in the day, I've led a charmed life. I feel no disrespect to this guy named Lou Gehrig, who once said, I feel like the luckiest person on the face of the earth. Well, I feel like the luckiest person on the face of the earth because there's a lot of you who raised your hand when you were asked, are you in school? And the challenge I have for all of you is to make sure that you find your passion. Because happiest is the person whose job is his or her hobby, because then you never have to work a day in your life. And I feel like I've led a charmed life. Because you know, my wife and I may not be the 2 wealthiest people, you know, like when they were talking about the Trump cabinet. I would have been, just to take you back to your statistics courses, I would have been about 5 standard deviations from the mean, okay? That's where we would have been. But if you judged wealth by the non-monetary rewards, we would have been 5 standard deviations the other way. Because when you're the labor secretary and when you head the civil rights division, when you get the privilege of working with the likes of Peter Nerona, your former United States attorney who's in the back of the room. I like to just speak my mind, okay? I'd be proud to tell people that I got fired by Donald Trump. And Peter and I got to do a lot of cases together, and you know what? You know, my parents taught me that if you want to get to heaven, you got to have letters of reference from folks living in the shadows. But I was 12 when my dad died, and my mom has been deceased for a while. They didn't tell me how many I need. And so we keep working. And I'll tell you what gets me out of bed in the morning, what inspired me every day at public service. It was Jose and the Jose's of the world. Because Jose, I think you told me your degree is in psychology and chemical substance dependency. Something of like, and you know, I was listening to you thinking about the opioid crisis in America. And you are clearly entering what people often call the giving professions. You know, making sure you're helping folks who are sometimes in pretty dire situations. And that's inspiring. And you know, for all of you, I challenged you to find that job that is your, not vocation, but your avocation. Well, you know what? One of the reasons I love being a Democrat is because in order to be able to pursue your avocation, you shouldn't have to have an educational mortgage. Because educational mortgages prevent you from realizing your avocation. And that's one of the many reasons why I'm so excited to be here with your governor, who I think is a spectacular governor. And again, we got to know each other days after her election, maybe a couple weeks at the most. And the thing about it that is so important is she understands what my parents taught me, which is education is the great equalizer. The education dividend is undeniable. The more education you have, the better your chances are of punching your ticket to the middle class. It's that simple. And we know in this state, and we know in every state, that if you have a high school degree, and I grew up in Buffalo, New York, for my parents' generation, a 10th grade education was sufficient to have a really good life. Working at Bethlehem Steel, working at Republic Steel, working at the Ford stamping plant. Those were great jobs. But Bethlehem Steel has been shuttered for 30 years. Republic Steel is now being replaced actually by the largest solar panel manufacturing facility in the Western Hemisphere. But it was 25,000 jobs before. It'll be about 4,000 or 5,000 jobs now. Those are 4,000 or 5,000 great jobs. But they're less jobs. And so that's why the one constant in life is change. And I believe that public policy needs to make sure that we're leveling that playing field for all of you. And that is why I believe that we need to be a nation of dreamers and a nation of doers. People talk about higher education affordability, and I hear from skeptics that, oh my God, that's just not attainable. Well, you know what, folks? At the turn of the 20th century, there were skeptics who were saying, K-12 education for free? What are you thinking? That's not necessary. People are working on farms. Why do they need it? Well, the reality was there was this thing called the Industrial Revolution that was going on. Because again, the one constant in American life from the beginning of time has been change. And so the people who were forward-leaning prevailed. And we had free K-12 education in the public school systems. It was one of the critical things that enabled us to lead the world and become a superpower because we were better trained and better educated than the rest of the world, and so we could win that race to the top. And that's what we need to do, because right now, as the governor correctly said, a high school education in Rhode Island is not enough more often than not. And so we don't want to leave anyone behind. And we want to, as Democrats, eliminate the term educational mortgage from the American lexicon. And we can do that. We can do that. We can do that by doing things like America's Promise and Rhode Island's Promise. And you know what, folks? This ain't partisan. It shouldn't be. Because you know what? I've been to Tennessee, where the Republican governor has done this. It can be done. And all it takes is the will at the top, the will in your legislature, and the grassroots pressure from folks like you. We had the experience, folks. So if you're wondering, how do I get this done? Well, you know what, folks? Take a page from what just happened in Washington a couple weeks ago. You know, January 20th was an undeniably notable day. It was a depressing day for me, I need to be honest. But I'll tell you, while January 20th was important, January 21st was far more important. Why? Because millions of Americans across this country came out, and frankly across this world, in urban areas, suburban areas, rural areas, and they said, you know what? Here are our values. And they spoke with their values. And they said, you know what? Somos los Estados Unidos, no somos los Estados divididos. We are the United States of America, not the divided States of America. We're in America, in which we believe if you work a full-time job, you shouldn't have to live in poverty. We're in America in which we believe that health care is a right, not a privilege. We're in America in which we believe that the living wage. That is who we are. That's what we said. And then less than 2 weeks ago, they were writing obituaries about the Affordable Care Act. We were just over at the Community College of Rhode Island, looking at a remarkable nursing program there. And you know what all those people who are about to graduate have in common? They have a job for life. Because you know what? Since the passage of the Affordable Care Act, we've seen just in the health sector almost 3 million jobs created. Why? Because people are getting access to health care. They're getting that preventive care they weren't getting before. So people are hiring. And so what we saw 2 weeks ago is they were writing the obituary of Obamacare. And by the way, you know, it's interesting. I can't help but get a little partisan here, but, you know, Donald Trump likes to brand everything. You know, you got Trump ties, Trump towers, Trump steaks, you know, Trump suits. But he didn't seem to want Trump care. You know, no, this is Ryan care. Well, you know, I tell you, the reason people came out in droves is they called it what it really was. I don't care. Because that's what it was. Because 24 million people were in danger of losing access to health care. It's not just Democrats who have pre-existing conditions in America. It's not just Democrats who are seniors connecting with $2,000 worth of prescription drug benefits. It's not just Democrats struggling with opioid abuse. And all of these things were in danger. And what happened? The grassroots spoke up. Republicans would show up at their town halls. They'd look out and they'd head for the hills because they didn't want to hear from their constituents. Because their constituents finally figured out the truth. The Affordable Care Act's a lifesaver, not a job killer. And the repeal effort was a boon for the wealthy and an age tax for people ages 50 to 64. So people got out there. And the energy out there in America translated into action. And action translated into good news for working people. So if there's one lesson to be learned from the last 4 months, is that the most important leverage that we have is the leverage of our people power. That is what I learned. I went out with the president. There's only one president for me when I call it the president. That would be President Obama. One of the most consequential presidents in America. go to Selma, Alabama to mark the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. Bloody Sunday was a day that continues to live in infamy across America. But at that event, the president reminded us of the most important word in the United States Constitution. And it is a simple two-letter word, we. It's amazing what we the people can do when we mobilize. It's amazing that in the aftermath of our original Constitution, people mobilize to attack the original sin of our Constitution. It's amazing what people did in Seneca Falls when women mobilized to address the unfinished business for women. It's amazing what we did during the Great Depression to build the social compact of the 20th century, to provide wage protections, work protections, social security protections. It's amazing what we did during the civil rights movement, when people marched to say, you know what? And justice for all means and justice for all. No footnotes, no exceptions. It's amazing what we do when we mobilize. And that's why I have been proud to be a Democrat. Because we have been on the right side of history when it came to fighting for Social Security. We've been on the right side of history when it came to fighting for Medicare and Medicaid. We've been on the right side of history when it came to fighting for the rights of people with disabilities. We've been on the right side of history when it came to fighting for the rights of women, for the rights of religious minorities, for the rights of our LGBTQ brothers and sisters. And we're on the right side of history now, here in Rhode Island, as we move forward with some of the most important conversations of our lifetime. I hope you'll get out there and mobilize on this issue of Rhode Island's promise. Because you know what? It's the promise of a good, decent future for people and their families. You know, if you're Latino in this state, 1 in 5 Latinos are prepared for the jobs of tomorrow here in Rhode Island. 3 in 10 African Americans are prepared for the jobs of tomorrow. 4 in 10 Rhode Islanders are prepared for the jobs of tomorrow. I want 10 of 10 Rhode Islanders to be prepared for the jobs of tomorrow. And that's what we're on. That's why we have introduced computer science into elementary school. Because you know what, folks? We're not going back to the abacus. You know, we're not doing that. And she understands that. And so that's what we're fighting for. I've been going all over the country talking about our values. Because there are a lot of folks out there who, frankly, don't know what the Democratic Party stands for, or they believe that the Democratic Party hasn't been fighting for them. And I'm here to say I listen and I hear those concerns. And I want to make sure people know what we stand for. We stand for fairness for everyone. We stand for the proposition, as I said before, that health care is a right and not a privilege. We stand for the proposition that education is indeed the great equalizer for everyone. We stand for the proposition that no matter where you were born, no matter who you worship, no matter what your first language of, no matter who you love, the American dream is within reach. And I want to make sure for everyone in this room that you know that we stand for the proposition that when you go and get higher education, you can come out without an educational mortgage. You can come out simply with the future at the palm of your hands. And we need your help, though, to make that reality. That's why I'm proud to be a Democrat. That's why I was proud to serve with Barack Obama, and that's why I'm proud to be here with Governor Raimondo, because she gets it. And I'll tell you right now, the innovation across this country isn't coming out of Washington. The innovation is coming out of state and local governments. It's coming out of Central Falls. It's coming out of Providence. It's coming out of the state of Rhode Island. It's coming out of states and local governments. And so we need your help to make sure that Rhode Island continues to be a leader, as this governor is. Things don't happen on their own, you know. The arc of the moral universe is indeed wide. long. And it does bend toward justice. But it never bends on its own. So let's bend it together. And let's hear from you about what we need to do to bend it together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I have the opportunity to ask a few questions. So if you could raise your hand, and I'll come to you to ask some questions. Let's start from the back first.
You could just state your name.
Well, my name is Adam Fade. Actually, I graduated Rhode Island College, class of 2015. So thank both of you for coming to my old school. Just had one question. Why is the focus on investments in education, like I Promise, become such a key part of the Democratic Party platform?
Well, it's a great question, and the short answer is it's not only part of the Democratic Party platform, it is part of the Rhode Island State Party platform as well. And that's because education has always been the great equalizer. And education is what Democrats have always fought for. And you look at, budgets are moral documents. If you want to draw contrast, and we have to make sure that we tell people what we stand for, and that we show people not the rhetoric of this administration, but the actions of this administration. They talk a mean game about, I'm going to make America great again, but here's the reality. Look at the budget. Budgets are moral documents. Cutting funding for Meals on Wheels. Cutting funding for low-income home energy assistance. Gets cold in Buffalo in the winter. Gets cold in Rhode Island in the winter. Gets hot in Florida in the summer. Cutting funding for low-income students in Rhode Island seeking access to higher education. That's not who we are as a nation. We're a strong nation because we're a compassionate nation. And we're a strong nation because we're a smart nation. We understand that the investments in education pay a dividend and allow us to build the next generation internet, to build the next generation healthcare, to cure disease. That's what we stand for. The cuts in funding proposed in this budget for the National Institutes of Health are stunning. Absolutely stunning. They will have impact here in Rhode Island, across America, and most importantly, they will have impact that will hurt our competitiveness as a nation. If we can't understand Alzheimer's, or we can't cure cancers, the cost of doing nothing is so significant. And that is why it's so important for us to lead with our values. And to me, this Rhode Island Promise is a quintessential example of good government, good policy, and you know what? It's a definition of our value statement as a Democratic Party. That's what we need to keep doing.
Thank you, Chairman. Let's take another question from this side. If anyone has a question.
Hi, my name is Jeff Salvador. I'm from Providence. So I'm interested.
What year are you?
I'm a senior.
Excellent. Congratulations.
So I'm interested in how the results of the 2016 election influenced your decision to bring this proposal forward.
Okay. So, in some ways, we've been at this for a long time. So, my first year as governor, we bulked up our apprenticeship program. We brought about a program where every high school student could take college classes for college credit for free. I think 4,000 or 5,000 kids have taken advantage of that. We, for the first time ever, brought about full-day kindergarten for every public school student in Rhode Island. And we tripled the number of pre-K classrooms. So we've been on this path, since the day I took office. Because I want to prepare for the future. I don't want anybody left behind. My dad, not that different from your story, my dad had a good manufacturing job at the Boulevard Watch Company. And when I was a kid, most people, and I am not that much older than you, believe it or not, when I get out of high school, most jobs in Rhode Island required a high school degree. If you get your high school degree, you get a decent job. Here's the thing. Boulevard Watch is long gone, and it is not coming back, and those low-skill manufacturing jobs are not coming back. And now when my kids get out of high school, a high school degree is not enough to get a good job. It just isn't. And I can't change that. But what I can do to make sure every Rhode Islander has a chance and a shot and an opportunity is to help them get the education and job training, credentials, and apprenticeship that they need. So, you know, the 2016 election, I agree, I was depressed. I'm over depressed now, and I'm just working like crazy. It just gave more urgency to my work. In an ideal world, the federal government would do what it's supposed to do and send us more money for higher education. They would not be cutting higher ed. They would not be cutting basic research. They would not be cutting Pell Grants or proposing to cut Pell Grants. So I would have done this either way, but there's a whole greater sense of urgency to get this done now that we can't count on the federal government.
Last question to your left. Here, yes, come to you right now.
My name is Christian Bonner. I'm from, I grew up in Providence. I graduated from UCLA. The question I have is about how this shifts funding from the existing Rhode Island Province program from CCRI and RIG to URI, which is URI, the median income at URI for family income is $115,000. 53% of the people, students at URI come from families in the top 20%. Under the current plan, 30% of the dollars, the scholarship dollars go to CCRI, 60% go to, about 68% go to RIC, and then the rest go to URI. Under the proposed plan, 61% of the dollars go to the students, will go to URI, and 30% will go to CCRI. Nothing will change for the students at CCRI, which is the school that has the largest percentage of poor students, the largest percentage of students of color. URI has the lowest percentage of poor students and the lowest percentage of students of color, and they stand to benefit the greatest from this plan. This plan is very aggressive.
So I'll take that. Here's the reality. The proposal, as it's currently proposed, is not means tested. You go to a Rhode Island high school, any high school, you graduate, you have to apply and get into URI or CCRI or RIC, and you are eligible. First, you have to get all the financial aid that you're eligible for, Pell Grant or Merit Scholarship, etc. You have to do that. You have to go to school full-time. That's a very important piece of this. Because we know students that go full-time are much more likely to graduate. So to be eligible, you have to go full-time because we want you to graduate. And then if you go to CCRI, we will guarantee you can get your 2-year associate's degree tuition-free. That applies to everybody. If you want to go to RIC or URI, well, you're on your own for the first 2 years, and then we'll get you through the second 2 years. My kids make fun of me. They're like, Mom, that's what you do at home. First we have to eat the broccoli and the chicken, and then we'll get some brownies. So that's the deal. First 2 years, you gotta get it through, and then the last 2 years, we'll make sure you don't have to pay for the tuition. Now, a lot of people say, well, good, why didn't you means test it? And here's my answer to that. 2 reasons. One, let's say basically the short answer is I think the middle class needs a break. This isn't just for low-income folks. Everyone needs a degree to get a good job, and I think the middle class needs a break. Let's say your mom's a school teacher, your dad's a nurse. or your dad works at the post office and your mom's a school teacher. Let's say your folks make a solid 6-figure income between the two of them, $130,000 a year. Solid, good middle class, 2 good middle class jobs. And they have 2 or 3 kids. And they all want to go to college. That is a real struggle for that family. And you know what? A lot of kids start, the older I get, the more I call them kids, a lot of students start, and they don't finish. At RIC, at URI, at CCRI. But they all deserve a chance. So this program is specifically designed for all high school graduates of Rhode Island. Nobody's left out, because I felt that that was the only way to level the playing field. And the reality is, even doing everything I just described, it's less than 0.5% of our budget. Do not let anyone tell you we can't afford this. I don't think we can afford not to do it. I talk to businesses every day. Come to Rhode Island. Come to, in the last 15 months, we've brought in a new company on average of once a month. You know what they all want to talk to me about? What are you doing to train Rhode Islanders? What are you doing to upskill Rhode Islanders? They love this program. They want to be here for the talent supply. So this is about equipping Rhode Island for the future. And that's why it's structured the way it is. And nobody's left behind, because I don't think anyone should be left behind. Let's get ready for the future. Let's be one of those states that isn't stuck. When I took office, we were stuck. It was 2014. We had the highest unemployment rate in America. Most other states were out of the recession. We were stuck. Now we're on the move. So let's keep the momentum and let's make it available to everybody.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. My name is Tyler Bishop. I currently live in Providence. And my question is about what should the DNC's role be in really supporting Democrats at the state and local level and really putting together smart and progressive proposals such as Rhode Island Promise and even some of the ones that you mentioned in Tennessee?
Sure. Well, I think part of the reason why people who voted Democrat in the past didn't this time is because a lot of folks felt that they didn't know what we stood for. So I think one of the best strategies moving forward, and this is what we're doing, is to lead with our values. We're actively engaged in the Affordable Care Act efforts. We're actively engaged in opposing the Muslim ban 1.0 and 2.0, and we'll be actively engaged in 3.0 and 4.0 and 5.0 if necessary, because they don't make our nation safer and they don't make our democracy stronger. Quite the contrary. They're a recruiting tool for folks who are the bad guys. And when you lead with your values on issues like this, and this is a pillar of the Democratic Party platform, education. Education's been the great equalizer. And so what I want to make sure is that when people go to the polls from here on in, and they've got a choice between an R and a D, that when they see that Democrat, they immediately know what we stand for. We stand for educational opportunity for everyone. We stand for health care as a right, not a privilege. We stand for empowerment of women. We stand for an America, a Rhode Island that works for everyone. And that's why I think issues like this, we have been very crystal clear in our platform, but I want to make sure that platforms don't just sit on shelves and gather dust. I want to make sure platforms are put into action. That's why I'm here.
Last question.
Mike Burke from Tiverton, and also a MSW graduate from RIC. And thanks to the Pell Grant, I was able to get to my undergraduate program in Pennsylvania. Governor, how will this will certainly benefit the students. How will it benefit Rhode Island as a whole?
So, a few ways. As I say, I think I talk to companies all the time, one that are here or that I'm trying to recruit here. And top of mind for them is, what are you doing to make sure that people of Rhode Island have the skills we need for our jobs? And this allows us to say, you know, we have apprenticeship programs, we have job training programs, we invest in K through 12, and making college affordable is a huge benefit to our economy. Not to mention what it does for the average Rhode Islander. The average income, you know, the unemployment rate for folks that don't have a college degree is about twice as high than it is for those that do. That's good for, that strengthens Rhode Island. A stronger middle class means a stronger Rhode Island, period.
If I could give a national perspective on that, because I've actually seen these programs across the nation. Let me just give you one example, and that's Tennessee, Republican governor. They have really been a national leader on this. And I'm a big believer that when someone's doing something good, I don't care what party you are, I'm going to speak truth to power. Governor Haslam has been a leader in this area, and I'll tell you why. You know, the most effective strategies for making sure that a state continues to thrive in their economy is you have to, principle number one of effective workforce development is you have to be demand driven. You know, we can't train widget makers anymore if no one's making widgets. That was the old, that was what we call train and pray. Okay? You train people to be widget makers and you pray that someone's hiring a widget maker. That is not good strategy. Demand-driven strategy is saying we talk to employers and we figure out what their needs are and what the core competencies are. And what we're hearing across the country, what Governor Haslam heard from Tennessee employers was we have dramatic shortages in a number of sectors that require more than a high school degree but less than a college degree. And the reason this has been successful is because they are filling that critical pathway. So I understand here in Rhode Island, people are asking, should I take a leap of faith in this? And the good news is that you've got some data to work off. You've got the innovation of other states. And this is taken off. And just as Rhode Island was a leader on paid leave, and many of the people who were concerned about that said it's going to break the bank. We can't afford to do it. And what we've discovered in Rhode Island is, it didn't break the bank, and we really can't afford not to do it. I think you're going to have the same experience here, and I speak as someone who did have the privilege of seeing it across the country. Yes, sir. We're going to take a couple more, because you asked such good questions. We'll go here and here. So,
employers tend to like H-1B visa holders and temp employees.
I'm sorry, could you repeat your question?
Yes, employers tend to like H-1B visa holders and also temp jobs. In a temp job, you're making less money, you don't have any chance for advancement, and your job is temporary. You work from week to week, essentially. My friend was unemployed. She recently gave up her food stamps to take a job as a temp. Very low salary, poor working conditions, and you go from week to week until someone tells you leave, because American workers are increasingly viewed as just-in-time, disposable workers. It's not a job, it's a gig. And that should change. We should favor a job which gives a person the opportunity to raise a family, buy a house, buy a car, and ascend through the middle class. I see that diminishing rather than increasing unless we take action to favor real jobs.
Agreed. And one of the many reasons why I support collective bargaining in this country is because collective bargaining is what brought us the middle class in America. And when you have the ability to bargain for everybody, then people do well. I was involved when Verizon was on strike. And you know, collective bargaining enabled 40,000 workers and their families to build a better life for themselves. And you know, when you're not at the table, as one of my friends in the union movement has said, you're frequently on the menu. And a big part of the challenge we've had, you know, in this country is that you've seen labor union density shrink. Workers have less leverage. Employers have more power. And you know what happens? Hours get cut, benefits get cut. More people are working. There's a place in Mississippi, a Nissan plant, where I met a worker. he is what they call a permatemp. A permatemp should be an oxymoron.
Yes.
He's a permanent temporary employee in this non-union place. Not only is he a permatemp, but he has been training people. He has to work 60 hours a week to make what the permanent employees make in 40. And not only that, to add insult to injury, he has to train from time to time the permanent employees who are doing basically the same work as him. That's America in the year 2017.
Incredible.
That's why I have fought hard for the right to organize, because they don't have a voice. And that's why, frankly, I don't own a Nissan. I mean no disrespect to those who do. But I think that as a consumer, I can use my purchasing power to support companies that actually make a good product and treat their employees appropriately in the process. And so we need to do more. And H-1B reform is part of that. Employers we had cases at the Labor Department where employers hired H-1B visa holders and let go their worker, because under the current rules, you can hire someone for a lower salary and displace your worker. That ain't fair. That's why we need immigration reform. But unfortunately, we're not going to get immigration reform. It's one of 1,000 reasons we need immigration reform. We need a pathway to citizenship for folks. We need to allow people to come out of the shadows. And we need to fix that challenge as well. So I hope you'll fight for that, because too many workers just ain't getting a fair shake anymore. There's one more.
In the front.
Hello, my name is Doug Trombley. I'm a senior currently at Rhode Island College, and I actually received the Rhode Island Common Scholarship currently in its current form. I'm only going to get out, graduating senior this semester, I'm only going to get out $5,000 in undergraduate debt. I'm very happy about that. My question, though, as it relates, is I'm a more practical man. I focus more on practical. My question for you, Governor, is about job training programs, specifically Real Jobs RI, and how this affects that, I guess.
Yeah. So you were the reason we worked so hard. So what you're, yeah. So this is what we did in the first year of the budget, was we set up the Rhode Island Promise Scholarship Program. We just got it going. It wasn't big enough. It was a beginning. We've changed some lives, and now what we're trying to do now is build on that and expand it so everybody's eligible. So I'm happy for you. Congratulations. So the Real Jobs Rhode Island program is a program that we started with Scott Jensen a couple of years ago when I took office, which is a big success. That's mainly for folks who are already in the workforce, who need some additional training in order to get a job or to get a better job. And it's exactly what Secretary Perez was talking about, which is it's demand driven. So what we do in that one is we get companies in certain industries. We have a manufacturing cluster, maritime, healthcare. The companies pretty much create the training. They say to us, if you train people in these areas, we will hire them. And so that's exactly what we're doing. So what we're trying to do, again, here's the reality. The world's changed, the economy's changed. To get a good job, you need some training, credential, degree. So for folks coming right out of high school, we're on the Promise, or an apprenticeship program. For folks that are maybe mid-career or in their career, we have Real Jobs Rhode Island and other programs. I was recently with a fellow who got through the Real Jobs Rhode Island program and got a job at an insurance company. And he was, I don't know, in his 40s or 50s. He had worked, he had been laid off, he needed new skills to get a new job. And she said, Governor, thanks for believing you can teach an old dog new tricks. So that's what that's about. So we're really attacking this issue, you know, from every which way. And I think you're seeing results. I think that's why our unemployment rate has dropped so much. And employers are taking notice. Employers want to be in places that have great skills programs. And it is my goal to make sure Rhode Island has the best workforce development system in America. So no one's left behind and everybody has a shot.
And one more